Well, welcome to another Friday night. Tonight, I want to, again, in our reparenting series, talk about three approaches that people can take to recovery. So, last week I talked about three possible life paths, two that don't lead to happiness but look like they're going to, and only the one that does lead to true happiness. And tonight, when I look at these three possible approaches to recovery, what I'm going to look at is that two don't lead to recovery, but they're probably taken by the majority of people. Only one leads to true recovery, and it's the least attractive for many people, but it's the only true path to recovery. So the first one is what we call outsourcing. And that is looking to somebody else or a program to fix me. So I'm kind of passive. I don't do a whole lot or do anything at all. But some expert comes along and just says, you need this medication, you need this surgery, you need this, and you'll be fixed. And so we trust them to come in and fix us, and we're quite passive in it. What that begins to look like when people come into other things is that they're looking for kind of a magic fix, a magic bullet that's going to enable them to bypass having to work hard, having it to take years of hard work for them to get better. They just want a quick, easy fix. Just to nuance this a little bit, what this looks like in the more subtle forms is this is a person who's really dependent for their recovery on external solutions. They'll participate a little bit in programs, but their participation is quite passive. They're really expecting somebody else or the program to fix them, and they just kind of have to show up and not do a whole lot. And so you start to see in them, they avoid really looking deep at their own issues. They avoid deep behavioral change that would require massive change of lifestyle, massive core issue changes. They want a recovery that's quite easy. That's not going to be too hard. And that's going to happen fairly quickly. And so if they're not getting it in one spot with one person, even though they might be the best program and therapist in the world, but if it's too realistic and it's requiring too much work and taking too long and it's requiring them to make too many changes, then they'll just go off and look for something else, the next best thing. And sadly, in our culture today, there's hundreds of people offering fad type treatments that are going to magically fix them. And so these people just keep jumping from program to program, looking for the final solution that's going to fix them up. So let me give you some examples. So really a lot of this comes from the medical model of physical ailments, where we do have to outsource our healing. So a person whose appendix is in trouble, or a person who has a sickness from bacteria or a virus or some medical illness, they go to a doctor. The doctor's the professional. The doctor does a surgery. The doctor gives them a medication. So they outsource their recovery to a professional and they get healed. They basically are passive. But if you think of a lot of medical situations, though, it's not total outsourcing. We go to a medical doctor. He might prescribe a surgery or a medication, but might also say, you know what, you need to do physical therapy. You need to make some changes in your lifestyle, in your eating, in your sleep, in your exercise. The medication alone isn't going to be enough to fix you. The surgery alone isn't going to be enough to fix you. So most within the medical model, yes, we're looking to the specialist to help us, but also to advise us on what we need to do. So we have to become very involved. We have to put in a lot of effort and a lot of work. But some people still are in a total outsourcing mode when it comes to medical stuff. So they have weight issues, they look to a diet program, they look to a new medication that's going to fix them so they don't have to change their lifestyle, they don't have to do any core issue work, they just want to be fixed. And so you get this all the time, that people still don't want to do a lot of changes in their personal life. They just want the doctor to fix them, the medication to fix them, without them having to change their habits. And that is so common in the West. Think of it in terms of how many people approach addiction or mental health recovery. I have worked with so many people that they go to an addiction program and they just think, if I go to this 8-week program and I make a couple little changes, I'll be fixed. And then I can maintain my basic same lifestyle, my same core issues, but I won't use drugs or alcohol again. And so they basically outsource their recovery to that program. Or they go to a therapist and they go, you fix my depression, you fix my anxiety. And so sadly, within much mental health work, though we might need medications, though we might need therapy, there's a mindset that says, you have to fix me, I don't have to change anything. I don't have to do any ongoing new behaviors, new ways of thinking, new lifestyle stuff. This you need to fix. And that is outsourcing. That's what many, many people do. And then you go to people wanting to get into shape, people want to lose weight, like we said. And so again, they're looking for a medication, a program that's just going to fix them without them having to make deep changes to their lifestyle, to their personal habits. And some people just never get beyond that. And so they jump from program to program, looking for one that's magically going to just make it easy and fix them. So I would say, sadly, within Western cultures especially, the whole medical model where we had to outsource a lot of physical problems has really kind of filtered down into our thinking about almost every problem we have in life, that we should be able to outsource it to a professional. They do the work. They provide a solution that's easy, that's quick, that just magically fixes us. And we haven't yet got to a more accurate way of looking at recovery in most areas of life, which we're going to come to. There's a second approach, sadly, that many take to recovery, and that is continuing to be the victim. And that is, I have a problem, but now instead of just saying, here's what I need to do to fix it, they just feel helpless to fix it. They feel hopeless. They just don't want to fix it. They're afraid to look at what it would require to fix it. And so from this very victim place, they blame everybody else for their problems. If they're in a relationship, they expect everybody else to make the changes to fix the relationship. They can go to a counselor and expect a counselor to give them advice that's going to easily fix it without requiring them to do anything. So they go asking for advice everywhere, but then they don't follow advice if it applies to them. They try to control and manipulate others to get them to change. If they get good advice, they're always making excuses as to why they can't follow that advice, why they can't change. Or they find ways to minimize that advice or criticize that advice so that they don't have to listen to that advice. They constantly misdiagnose the problem. So if there's problems in the marriage, they diagnose it's because we're not doing this. If their kid is struggling, they diagnose that it's not because of anything I've done, it's because the kid's got some issues. Misdiagnose so that they don't have to make any changes. And then at the other end of it, some victims are people that act strong, like, I don't need help. I don't need a therapist. Only weaklings need therapists. And so there's still a victim trying to act like they don't need help, but then they blame everybody. They just refuse to do something that they think is only for weak people. So that leads to the third approach to recovery, which to me is the only one that works. And that is to accept responsibility that I need to change. I might need support and help from professionals, and I might need advice, but I got to do the work. And it might not be easy. It's going to be a lot of hard work. It's going to take time, but I am willing to do the hard work, make the changes necessary. I take ownership that this is mainly dependent on me. Now, there's a couple things here, and this is where I want to go on the rest of our time. So what you're doing is accepting change, hard work, and that can be really tricky for some because recovery, healing requires change. And many don't realize that that actually can be quite triggering for them. To the brain subconsciously, when it looks at change, different things get triggered. So number one, potential change triggers fear. Fear that if I make this change, I might get hurt. I'm stepping into the unknown because I've never been here before with this change and I don't know what's going to happen, so I might get hurt. And I might fail. And I might be out of control. I'm in control of my own little world, even though it's messed up and I'm getting hurt all the time. But if I change, I don't know what to do there, and I feel out of control. Fear. And so all change, what people need to understand is that growth requires change, but every change triggers old fears. And that causes many people to go, well, I'm not going to change. The fear overpowers the desire to change. There's another little tricky piece here. And what happens when a person changes is usually life when you're in pain, life when things aren't working well, you've kind of got stuck in a rut. You've got your own daily routine, your own daily, almost a comfort zone. This is your normal. This is what you're used to. When you change, you're moving out of your comfort zone, out of your comfortable routine, and that puts you into this brand new space. What we don't realize is our brain likes routine. It likes things we do every day, habits. Change is unfamiliar. Change feels unsafe. Change puts us in a place where this is weird, unknown. It doesn't feel right. Now I feel unsafe. So for many people, even though this change is necessary, even though this change is going to lead to growth, it feels so unfamiliar and unsafe that people go back. I'd rather stay unchanged, even though it's hurting me. Another thing that people often don't realize is that change results in emotional resistance. So we talked about change triggers fear, but change can also trigger sadness or even grief. So to change, I might have to let go of certain people. To change, I might lose relationships. I might lose a marriage. I might lose my job. There could be a lot of losses. There could be a lot of sadness. So change adds stress to my life. And the brain doesn't like more stress. And so for a lot of people, as soon as they go to change, there's this emotional resistance that don't do that. It's going to add grief. It's going to add sadness. It's going to add fear. It's going to add stress. Let's just stay the way they are. And so for many people, that resistance is, no, I'm not going to let go of all of these things, even though it's healthy for me, because it'd be too painful. It would add pain to my life, and I don't want to do that right now. Then there's another piece with change that's important to understand, is when you decide to change, you got to learn new tools. You got to learn a new understanding of life, a new way of looking at life, new ways of thinking, new ways of doing things. That's a lot of learning, and that can feel overwhelming. So we could talk about it as cognitive overload. The brain, it likes learning, but it prefers efficiency, not feeling overloaded, because that then means it's got to work harder, gets tired, and it just feels overwhelmed. And so for many people, they go, I want to change. Then they start to learn all these new tools and all this new awareness. And they go, this is too much, this is too much. And they get overloaded and they go, you know what? It's not worth it. So just, again, be aware of that. So understand that true recovery means I accept responsibility to change. That's number one. But then there's a second component here, and that is there's an attitude required of commitment. Now, there's other attitudes. So let me lead into it with this. What I see today in the recovery world is much of recovery focuses on lots and lots of really, really good tools that help you deal with emotions, that help you deal with boundaries, that help you deal with very, very important things. And those are excellent tools. But to me, that's only one part of recovery. And if you only learn those things, and those things are fun to learn, those things are often easier to learn. But if you only learn that, you're going to fail in recovery because there's two other parts. The first is you got to get to the underlying issues. You got to look at the underlying trauma. That is so vital if one is going to heal. But then there's a third thing. You also have to have certain attitudes. You can't make it in recovery with just tools, with just looking at underlying issues. There has to be certain attitudes. And I want to look at these over the next couple of weeks. But the first one is there has to be an attitude of commitment or all in, willing to go to any lengths to get healthy. 100% commitment. Realizing that anything less is not enough. Now, let me say this. I have worked with thousands of people over the last 20 plus years in this field. What I have seen is a number of them have truly healed and recovered, but many of them, they've done well for a bit and then they've slid back, they've stopped growing, they got kind of reached a certain point and then that's as far as they got. And I go, what's made the difference? They have the same information. They initially looked like they both wanted to change and heal. And there's all kinds of different things. From some weren't willing to work on the deeper issues. So what's the issue there? They weren't all in. They weren't totally committed that being healthy was their highest priority. Other priorities, comfort, a relationship, not going through the pain or change of changing deeper issues. Those overpowered the desire to heal. So you have to be all in if you're going to eventually get healthy. There's no other way. But what I realized along the way is that many people want recovery. They desire it in their limbic brain, but they don't want it as badly as they think they do. So they start in, I want recovery, but then they're dropping off. They're stopping growing. And you begin to realize, I don't think they wanted it as badly as they thought they did. They wanted something else as a higher priority than recovery. And that now recovery is interfering with that higher priority, and the higher priority is winning out. That I have seen over and over again. So let me give you a couple of the things. Many people are motivated to do recovery only as long as they're in pain. So they come into recovery because they're in a world of pain and they want recovery so they'll get rid of the pain. As soon as the pain starts to lessen because they're doing well in recovery, they're making changes, they're doing new routines and all of that, and it's leading to a better life and good things are happening, they go, oh, okay. Pain's gone. I don't need to work anymore. I can go back to my old lifestyle because the pain's been fixed. And so they didn't really want to get totally healthy for the sake of being totally healthy. They wanted to get healthy enough to get rid of pain so they could go back to the way they used to be. Others, They come in and they want recovery because they've got a whole lots of consequences from past decisions, negative consequences that are now affecting them. So they made a lot of past decisions that ended up in jail. They ended up losing their kids. They ended up with the threat of divorce or the threat of the loss of a job. And so all of these consequences are piling up and they go, this is a crisis. I need recovery. And they do well in recovery. And so all of a sudden, all of their legal stuff clears up. They get their kids back. Their relationship, their spouse says, yeah, we'll give it another try. So the consequences look like they're being resolved and being cared for. And they go, okay, good. I can stop recovery. So again, they weren't doing recovery because deep down they wanted to get healthy more than anything else. They were doing recovery only to fix the crisis so that more bad things wouldn't happen to them. They weren't truly all in. Then what I have seen for some is they will do recovery as long as it's easy. As long as it doesn't require too much work, too much pain for too long. They don't want a recovery that they just get information but don't have to deal with emotional pain. They want a recovery that doesn't require too many changes. They're okay with a lot of superficial changes. They'll start going to maybe a support meeting once a week or doing some exercises each morning or a bit of meditation. But to ask them to deal with deep shame, to ask them to deal with deep fear of abandonment, they're not willing to go there. And so superficial changes, no problem. Deep changes around core issues, not willing to go there. If you ask them to change their codependency patterns, their people-pleasing patterns, not willing to do it. And so, again, people want a recovery, but only as long as it's not too hard, not too painful, not too much change, it's easy. Abraham Lincoln said, commitment is what transforms a promise into reality. So I've heard many people say, coming into recovery, I told my kids I'm going to be a better dad. Now I'm going to change. I told my spouse, my parents, I'm going to change. They make a promise. And they think that this program is just going to fix them. They're going to outsource it. And then that's going to fulfill the promise. No. That promise will only be fulfilled if they are all in to do what is necessary to change and get healthy. So let me develop this commitment all in even more. So commitment is a state or quality of being dedicated to a cause, an activity, goal, or relationship despite challenges. So it's that dedication to something no matter how difficult it gets. So you say, I'm going to do this. I'm going to go for this goal. I'm going to do this activity. I'm going to take on this relationship. You realistically count the cost. This is what it's going to require for energy, for pain, for my time. This is what I'll have to give up. I have to do this. I have to do this every day for years. You lay out the cost, you think through it realistically, you have a clear picture of what's involved, and you say, I am committing myself. I am dedicated to make this happen. That's what we're talking about here. So that then means you're committed to keep doing the right thing consistently over and over, regardless of how you feel. You're going to have days where you don't feel like doing it, but you're going to do it anyways. And so it's what I want you to see is this. Commitment is something that is determined in the cortex. I understand what it's going to take. I understand the cost. I have thought it through. I have weighed out the pros and the cons. And in my cortex, I go, this is a good thing because it leads to healthy. So I am going to do it. But then your limbic comes along and says some days, oh, I'm too tired today to do it. Oh, I'm too grumpy today to do it. Oh, I'm too sad today to do it. I'm too angry today to do it. And the cortex says, doesn't matter what my limbic brain is feeling. I made a commitment. This leads to healthy. I am going to do it anyway. So I am going to persevere. I am going to hang in there when life gets hard. And it's realizing that I can lay out a plan and on paper it looks neat and tidy and simple. Yes, it looks involved. I know that it's going to be difficult. But in reality, there's going to be some days worse than others. There's going to be some hardships that I maybe didn't see coming. I'm going to get hurt maybe and fail at times, but I'm going to keep on. I'm committed. I'm going to keep working at this through the negatives and the positives. And then for some people, what they don't realize is they're committed to do the right thing as long as they're starting to get positive results fairly quickly. So I'm going to make these changes. I'm going to do the right thing. And then if I don't see some results within 2 weeks or a month, what's the point? It doesn't look like it's working. Sometimes in recovery, we do the right thing and we see results very quickly that are positive. Other times in recovery, we do the right things for days and weeks, and we're not seeing positive results. We're just seeing more hardship, more frustration, and we can get really discouraged. But if wise people who have walked this path before us say, hang in there, good stuff will come in time, you just got to hang in through this long, rough stretch. Then we hang in there. We stay committed. So let me talk about commitment and parenting. Just have you think of it in terms of parenting. So here you decide to be parents. So what do you realize? You're bringing this helpless baby into the world that is dependent on you for every single need. You have to provide for it physically, emotionally. You have to be there on days that you're feeling sad, on days that you are frustrated with your other life responsibilities. You have going to have other people wanting you to take on their causes and take on extra responsibilities, but you go, no, if I am going to be a good parent, I have to commit myself to be there for this child, to meet their 12 needs. I have to say no to other things. I have to make sacrifices. I have to connect with this child, be present to this child, be attuned to this child, and consistently, day after day, regardless of how I feel, take care of this child. That's what a parent needs to do before they sign up, is to weigh out the cost, weigh out what is involved, and then commit themselves to do it, regardless of how they feel on any given day. That's good parenting. It requires commitment. You can't be a good parent by doing it half-heartedly, by only doing it on days when you feel like doing it, when you have other things in life more important than providing for your kids. It just doesn't work. So let's take it to relationships. You can learn everything about relationships, all the information, read 1,000 books, but unless both parties are committed to do what it takes to get healthy, to love, you'll never have a good relationship. Bottom line. So one way to look at that is the word reciprocity. And so what is commitment in relationships? It's two people who are willing to give as much as they get. They are willing to put into the relationship what they expect to get out of the relationship. They are committed to do that every day, regardless of how they feel. That's what makes a good relationship. Sadly, many people today, they want a good relationship without the responsibilities of a good relationship. They want a good relationship where the other puts more into it than they put into it, where they get more than they give. That doesn't make a good relationship. Any relationship that isn't marked by this reciprocity, by this commitment to equally giving out of love, will eventually die, will eventually become more and more unhealthy. Anyone who's wanting from the relationship more than they are willing to give to the relationship will eventually destroy the relationship. That is just so important to see. Now, just think of it in terms of farming. If you want more from the land than you're willing to put into the land, you're eventually going to destroy the land and you're going to destroy the farm. Think of anything in life where you demand more from it than you put into it. It's eventually going to destroy it. It's going to lead to ongoing discontent in you as well. It doesn't work. And so, again, all of life is built on a commitment to giving as much as I expect. And that is so important to understand. Now, let me take it one step further, this whole commitment thing. Think of commitment and talent. If you look at two equally talented people with the same information, so let's say two equally talented golfers, the same information about golfing, the same set of clubs, the same dream to be a great golfer, one becomes a great golfer, one doesn't. What's the difference? Their commitment to practice and work hard every day. The one that just is relying on their talent, it'll take them so far, but not to the greatness that the other has because of commitment. So understand, no one has become extremely successful unless they've been totally committed. That means they have sacrificed, they have worked very hard, they have persevered, they've given it their all. This has become one of their greatest priorities, that they have been willing to put everything underneath in order to attain it. That's what we're talking about with commitment. So understand then that commitment to this goal, this priority, requires saying no to other things. It requires saying no to certain relationships, to other worthwhile causes. I can't take them on because for me to get to this goal, I can only have these relationships. I can only take on these causes because I need my time for this other stuff. I need my energy for this other stuff. Think of it in terms of every time you take on a new commitment. So let's say you decide to get a new puppy. That now takes more time, more energy, that you now have less time and energy for other things. So every time even you take on a goldfish, you are making a commitment to feed it every day, to change its water. That affects the rest of your life. So at a relationship, a romantic relationship, that takes a huge more amount of time of energy. Taking on a new commitment changes your life. So if you're taking on recovery, expect it to change your life radically. You can't just take on recovery and nothing else change. You're not going to make recovery. If recovery is a priority, that you want to get healthy, it's going to change every aspect of your life. And that to me is not to be alarmist, that's to be realistic. Because so many people come into recovery without accepting that, without seeing that, and they think they can do recovery and not change anything hardly. Recovery, if you're truly committed to be healthy, will change everything radically. Somebody has said this: you cannot conquer what you are not committed to. So what are the core ideas that we're getting to with this commitment stuff? I hope you can see dedication and perseverance. You just stick at it. You are focused on it. You have long-term goals, so you have a long-term focus, not just a daily focus. But more than that, when it comes to recovery, your highest priority is getting healthy. That surpasses all other priorities in your life. If getting healthy means letting go of this, then I'm willing to let go of this. If getting healthy means changing this, and that's going to be uncomfortable, I'm willing to change this. If getting healthy means dealing with this and it's going to be painful, I'm willing to deal with it. That bottom line is your highest priority. And that to me is what many don't think through carefully enough. So let's go a little bit further, because commitment is a great concept, but many things work against it. So think of it in terms of complex trauma. A person with complex trauma, they kind of have a fear of commitment. Complex trauma works against commitment. So what happens in complex trauma is you're in danger all the time. And so you're constantly needing escape hatches so that if you're in a situation and it gets dangerous, you can get out of there. That becomes just this overriding priority in your life. So now you're kind of afraid of commitment because that might lock you into a situation and you could get hurt. And so you shy away from commitment because your fear is you're going to get locked into a dangerous situation you can't get out of. So what I want people to say is, I can commit to something, and then if I see it's turning dangerous, I can get out. But I can initially be totally all in because I've checked it out, it looks really good, and I'm going to totally be all in. Now, if they change leadership or something changes and all of a sudden becomes dangerous, I can get out. That's fine. But don't let that fear of what might potentially happen keep me from ever being all in. So what happens for many people with complex trauma is they're kind of 1 foot in, 1 foot out. They're dipping their toe in the shallow end of the pool, afraid to jump into the deep end of the pool. Because that's commitment. And they always have to kind of be ready to get out. And it's just something to be aware of. There's a second part of complex trauma, and that is that operating out of the limbic brain. So you operate and do stuff as long as you feel good about it, as long as it gives you energy, as it's exciting, it makes you feel good. And so I do recovery as long as it's easy, as long as it makes me feel good, as long as good stuff is happening, as long as I'm feeling motivated, as long as I got enough pain to make me motivated. As soon as all of that's gone, recovery becomes less important. So that's why we say many people from complex trauma are great starters and poor finishers. They lack that staying ability, that perseverance, that commitment to push through even when their limbic brain isn't as excited. But there's something else that works against commitment, and that would be our culture. Often for many people raised in affluence, where everything was kind of handed to them, they begin to expect that. They begin to think life should be easy. They should be able to get lots of stuff and not give back anything, not have to work hard at anything. They don't mind working hard to get an instant reward, but to work hard every day and to have a hard life? No. They want an easy life where they choose when they work hard. Many people are more committed to taking than they are to giving. That sadly is the bottom line. And so what's happened with all of that is as soon as life gets too hard, let's just quit. Let's find something easier. So there's a cultural mindset that you have to think through. Then other complex trauma stuff, cultural stuff is that fear of failure, that fear of pain, that fear of the unknown, that fear of change. So fear, that works against commitment. Then, sadly, many people coming with complex trauma have a lack of clarity, a lack of purpose, what to do with their life. So they don't even know what to commit to. And then that limbic brain, short-term gratification. Other thing that comes out of complex trauma is people pleasing. So you overcommit to please everybody, say yes to everybody, and then you're overcommitted and now you don't have time to actually work on getting healthy yourself. Another thing for many people is that instant gratification turns into I want instant results. If you're saying this is a marathon and not a sprint and I have to wait for a long time before I see results, no, I'm not in for that. I want instant. And so there's an patience with the slowness of the process. And then for many, there's an inconsistent motivation. So one day I don't want to go to jail, so I'm into recovery. I don't want to lose my kids, I'm into recovery. And then, I'm going to get a new girlfriend, so I want to do recovery to please her. And then, I got a new girlfriend, now I'm too busy for recovery. So they got motivation switching all the time. They don't have an overriding motivation to get healthy. It's constantly shifting based on what's going on in their limbic brain. So there's one other piece I need to add here, and that is commitment is necessary, but you got to qualify it. It's commitment to the right thing. Commitment to the wrong thing can be disastrous. Commitment to the wrong solution is not going to make you happy or healthy. So it's commitment to the right thing, which is getting healthy, which then requires a realistic plan on how to get there, what it takes to be healthy, what are the components of my life, what are the underlying issues I have to deal with. It has to be a well thought out, accurate plan with the right priorities, the right tools, the right activities. Then that's what I'm committed to. So you still need the education piece. You still need the understanding piece. I'm not just talking about commitment all on its own. It's commitment with the right information. So how do we improve in this area? Again, let's start with asking, what is the most important priority of your life? Hopefully it is to get healthy, because in healthy, you have good relationships. You're happy. You have a contentment. You are meeting your needs. All of those things are part of being healthy. Everything flows out of being healthy. But for some people, they say, yeah, I want to be healthy, but really their higher priorities, I want to be comfortable. I want my friends to like me. I don't want to lose any friends. I never want my parents to be mad at me. I don't have to set boundaries or walk away from my parents. Those are higher priorities than getting healthy. And so you have to really come to a place where getting healthy, regardless of the cost, is my highest priority. Then you go to, okay, what do I need to build into my life every day to get healthy? What are the issues I need to deal with that are keeping me from getting healthy? So think that through. Then once you begin to realize this is what I need to do to get healthy, so I got to do these things every day to meet my needs, to deal with my deeper issues. I got to go to therapy. I got to have support groups. I got to have connection with people on the journey. What does my week now look like? So you get out your weekly schedule and you plan everything into that. Then if that's your highest priority, you go, okay, that takes up all of my time. I only have an hour or two left to do some other things. I have to say no to a whole bunch of other things. So you begin to do that. So you're working on learning to meet your 12 needs, building the routine and habits into your life to do that. What I encourage people to do is build out this plan, then share it with somebody experienced, a professional in this field, who's able to say, good plan, except you might be missing a couple things here. And they can just help you tweak the plan and get it to be more realistic. Third thing, and if you're ever going to succeed in being committed, is you then have to accept the plan. Because what you begin to realize once you get this plan is this is going to be a lot of hard work. This is going to take a lot of time. This is going to be saying no to a lot of different things. This is going to involve doing a lot of hard work and maybe not seeing some instant gratification results for a while. Do I accept it? Am I prepared to do it? If you don't accept it, then you're going to complain about it all the time. Then you need to regularly review your plan. Is it working? Do I need to change anything? I've taken on some extra commitments. Was that too much? And you need to constantly be evaluating how things are going. I think it's important to stop regularly and go, Let's go back to why I am doing this. Let's go back to what is my goal. Why I'm doing this? Because if I don't get healthy, nothing else is going to work. Everything depends on me getting healthy. That's my goal. Just put it all back into focus. Then be very careful about taking on new responsibilities, new commitments, saying yes to things before you carefully think it through. It is so easy just to say yes in the spur of a moment and then go, oh no, now how am I going to fit that in? I'm going to have to sacrifice some very important parts of my plan. And so be very careful about saying yes when you're in a limbic brain excited mode, because that's when many people just think they can take on the world. They feel like Superman, and then they take on too much. Finally, once you commit to your plan, many people find it helpful to have accountability, people that they just share their plan with, their commitment with, that can check up on them and just see how are you doing, are you sticking to it. So commitment, essential. It is a core attitude that is not easy, takes a lot of work, but I hope this helps you. So if this was helpful, like, subscribe, share it with others. But thank you for being with us for another Friday. Have a great weekend.